The crimson hull of the Dominion's fist cast an ominous shadow across Earth's moon as Ambassador Vexithara stepped onto the communication platform. Her 6 eyes gleamed with the confidence of a species that had conquered 400 star systems, without a single defeat. The human delegation waited in their primitive station, undoubtedly trembling at the sight of the hegemony's flagship. "Humans of Earth," she began, her voice carried across subspace frequencies to every corner of the blue-green world below. "You have been judged by the Galactic Hegemony Council. Your species shows dangerous potential, aggressive expansion, technological innovation, and worst of all, individual thinking that threatens the natural order of civilized space." Admiral Kestrel Voss stood at the head of the human delegation, her weathered face betraying nothing as she listened to the translators. Mechanical voice. Behind her, the other representatives of Earth's unified government maintained their composure, though she could sense their tension. "Therefore," Vexithara continued, raising her 4 arms in a gesture of absolute authority, "you are commanded to submit to hegemony rule. Surrender your weapons, dismantle your military, and accept our guidance. You have 72 of your hours to comply or face complete annihilation." The alien ambassador gestured to the viewing port, where the massive hegemony fleet hung in formation. 300 vessels of various designs from a dozen conquered species, their weapons bristling with enough firepower to glass continents. Admiral Voss stepped forward, her voice steady. "Ambassador Vexithara, we appreciate your offer. However, humanity requires time to consider such a momentous decision. We request a formal meeting in 48 hours to discuss terms." Vexithara's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Terms? There are no terms, human. Only submission or extinction. But very well, 48 hours. Use them wisely." The transmission cut, leaving the human delegation in tense silence. As the alien vessel withdrew to a respectful distance, Admiral Voss turned to her colleagues. General Wraith Nightingale, head of Earth's combined forces, was already activating. "Secure channels. Well, Admiral, they certainly know how to make an entrance." "Indeed they do," Voss replied, watching the alien fleet through the reinforced viewport. "But I wonder if they've done their homework." Dr. Lydia Ironforge, Earth's chief xenobiologist, pulled up holographic displays of the alien ships. "Their vessels are impressive, but they're following standard formation patterns. Very predictable." "Predictable is good," said Director Maxim Steelwind from Earth's Strategic Intelligence Division. "It means they've grown comfortable with their usual tactics. Comfortable enemies make mistakes." General Nightingale's communication board lit up with incoming signals from across the solar system. "Phase 1 is already in motion. Jupiter Command. Confirms all assets are moving to designated positions. The outer colonies are powering up their deep space monitoring arrays." Admiral Voss nodded grimly. "Then we proceed as planned. Signal Earth Command. Operation Starfall is authorized. And General, make sure our guests don't detect any unusual activity. Let them enjoy their moment of superiority." As the human delegation dispersed to their respective commands, none of them smiled, but there was a shared understanding in their eyes. The hegemony had made a critical error. They had given humanity time to prepare. More importantly, they had assumed that Earth's military forces were concentrated around their home world. They were about to learn just how wrong that assumption was. 47 hours later, Ambassador Vexithara returned to the communication platform, her confidence undiminished. The human delegation appeared smaller somehow, more resigned. Perfect. Another species ready to bow before hegemony superiority. "Humans," she announced, "your time expires in 1 hour. Have you prepared your surrender?" Admiral Voss stood slowly, her hands clasped behind her back. "Ambassador, we have indeed reached a decision. However, before we proceed, we'd like to make a small demonstration of our own. Professional courtesy, you understand. Vexathera's posterior eyes narrowed suspiciously. What manner of demonstration? Simply a display of Earth's cultural achievements. Our music, if you will. Admiral Voss nodded to General Nightingale, who activated a broad-spectrum transmission array. Across the solar system, a single musical note began to play, Beethoven's Symphony No. 9, transmitted on frequencies that would reach every corner of space within light years. But embedded within the classical composition was a signal no human ear could detect, a quantum-encrypted activation code that had been carefully prepared for this moment. The first response came from the asteroid belt, where mining station Hadley's Hope suddenly lit up with energy signatures that made Vexathera's mandibles freeze mid-click. What had appeared to be a simple mining facility was shedding its camouflage plating, revealing the unmistakable silhouette of a battlecruiser. Impossible, Vexathera whispered, her translator struggling with her species' expression of shock. But that was only the beginning. Throughout the solar system, the symphony continued to play, and with each crescendo, more civilian installations revealed their true nature. Jupiter's atmospheric research stations separated into formation, their industrial facades falling, a way to expose military-grade hulls and weapon arrays. The deep space communication satellites around Saturn ignited fusion drives that had been cold for years, positioning themselves with the precision of warships. General Nightingale watched, his tactical display with satisfaction as reports flooded in. Titan shipyards report 100% operational readiness. Ganymede defense platform is online. The Kuiper Belt installations are moving to intercept positions. But the real shock came when the outer system monitoring stations, those peaceful scientific outposts studying cosmic radiation, powered up their true purpose. Admiral Voss allowed herself a small smile as she watched Vexathera's 4 eyes widen in horror. You see, Ambassador, Admiral Voss said conversationally, humanity has a rather unfortunate habit of preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. We've been watching your hegemony's expansion for quite some time. Your methods are consistent. On the holographic display, the true scope of humanity's deception became clear. What the hegemony had assumed was a single-planet species with limited military capability was revealing a vast network of fortified positions, hidden shipyards, and battle-ready fleets that stretched from Mercury's solar collectors to the heliopause, stations at the system's edge. Dr. Ironforge stepped forward, her voice clinical. We've had 70 years to study your previous conquests. Your tactics never vary. Overwhelming force concentrated against the homeworld while ignoring outer system installations. It works well against species that keep their military centralized. Director, Steelwind added, unfortunately for you, humans have never been particularly good at keeping all our eggs in one basket. We tend to scatter, fortify, and prepare contingencies for our contingencies. The hegemony fleet, suddenly looking far less imposing, found themselves surrounded by a growing constellation of human military assets. Ships emerged from behind asteroids, powered up from cold orbits around gas giants, and decloaked from positions that should have been empty space. Vexathera's voice cracked through the translator. This is a trick. Deception. You cannot have hidden such a force, Admiral. Voss's expression remained neutral. Oh, we haven't hidden anything, Ambassador. We've simply built everything where you weren't looking. The question now is whether you'd like to reconsider your earlier ultimatum. The symphony reached its final movement, and with it, the last hidden elements of humanity's defense grid came online. The hegemony fleet that had arrived as conquerors now found themselves outnumbered 3-1 by forces they never knew existed. In the command center of the Dominion's Fist, Fleet Admiral Krasoth stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. The simple conquest he had been promised had transformed into a nightmare of strategic miscalculation. His 300 ships, moments ago the dominant force in the system, now faced nearly 1,000 human vessels emerging from every corner of Sol's gravitational well. "How did our intelligence miss this?" he demanded of his staff, his tentacles writhing with agitation. Intelligence Coordinator Yithmar's carapace flushed with embarrassment. "Sir, all scans showed typical industrial and civilian installations. The humans' stealth technology is unprecedented." Admiral Krasoth's compound eyes focused on the largest human vessel now approaching from the direction of Jupiter, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even his flagship. "What is that monstrosity?" "Designation unknown, sir. It's larger than a hegemony super-destroyer." The truth was even more unsettling. The UNS Prometheus had been under construction in Jupiter's shadow for 15 years, disguised as a gas mining platform. At 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons systems that represented humanity's most advanced military technology, it was a ship designed specifically for this moment. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Fleet Admiral Titus Blackthorne studied the enemy formation with the calm assessment of a chess master examining his opponent's position. "Signal all units. Maintain formation integrity. Let them make the first move." His tactical officer, Commander Nova Sterling, reported from her station. "All defensive grids are online, sir. The Martian orbital platforms report ready status. Luna Base confirms missile batteries are armed and tracking." "And our friends in the outer system?" "The Pluto garrison is holding position as planned. The Oort cloud stations report full sensor coverage of potential escape routes." Admiral Blackthorne nodded approvingly. Every human military academy taught the same fundamental principle. Space warfare was three-dimensional, and controlling the high ground meant controlling every possible vector of approach and retreat. Aboard the Dominion's Fist, Vexathara was frantically communicating with Fleet Admiral Krasoth. "You assured me this would be simple intimidation. Where did they get such a fleet?" Krasoth's response was grim. "The humans are more cunning than our projections indicated, but we still possess superior individual ship capabilities and experienced crews. We can fight our way out and return with a larger force." "Fight our way out." Vexathara's voice rose to a shriek that made her translator emit concerning static noises. "I came here to accept a surrender, not command a battle." The first shots came not from the hegemony fleet, but from what appeared to be empty space near Europa. A squadron of human stealth frigates, their hulls coated with metamaterials that bent sensor waves around them, emerged from their hiding places to deliver precision strikes against the hegemony's communication arrays. Admiral Krasoth watched in frustrated amazement as his fleet's coordination systems went dark one by one. "They're targeting our command. Infrastructure first. Professional military doctrine." His aide, Sub-Commander Veltar, was monitoring enemy communications. "Sir, they're using quantum-encrypted burst transmissions across multiple frequency bands. We can't jam their coordination." The human strategy unfolded with mechanical precision. Rather than engaging in a massive frontal assault, the sole defense force implemented what Admiral Blackthorne privately called death by 1,000 cuts. Small, highly maneuverable squadrons struck at vulnerable points in the hegemony formation, then faded back into the vast emptiness of space before return fire could be coordinated. Commander Sterling reported updates from across the battle space. "Enemy flagship is attempting to break orbit and retreat, sir. Should we pursue?" "Negative. Let them run into the Kuiper Belt Reception Committee. I believe Admiral Ironside has prepared a warm welcome." The hegemony fleet, its confidence shattered and its formation disrupted, began a fighting withdrawal toward the outer system. But humanity's planning had accounted for this possibility. The research stations scattered throughout the Kuiper Belt revealed themselves as fortress platforms, their massive railguns and directed energy weapons creating a gauntlet that no fleeing ship could avoid. Fleet Admiral Krasoth realized with growing horror that the humans hadn't just prepared a defense, they had prepared a trap. The Sol system had been transformed into a carefully orchestrated killing field, with multiple layers of overlapping fire zones and no avenue of escape that wasn't covered by human weapons. As the battle raged across the solar system, one thing became increasingly clear. The hegemony had not encountered a primitive world ripe for conquest. They had stumbled into the territory of a species that had spent generations preparing for this exact scenario. The battle for Sol had been raging for 6 hours, and Fleet Admiral Krazoth was beginning to understand the true scope of humanity's deception. His fleet, once a symbol of hegemony dominance, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to anticipate his every tactical decision. "Sir, we've lost another cruiser squadron near the Mars orbital defense grid," reported his tactical coordinator, her voice strained with exhaustion. "The humans are using coordinated drone swarms to overwhelm our point defense systems." Krazoth studied the holographic battle display with growing frustration. Every standard hegemony tactic, the ones that had secured victory in 400 previous conquests, was being countered by human forces that fought with disturbing intelligence and coordination. "How are they maintaining such precise fleet coordination across such distances?" he demanded. "The communications delay alone should make system-wide tactical command impossible." Intelligence Coordinator Yithmar had been analyzing human transmissions for hours. "Sir, they appear to be using quantum entanglement communicators for instantaneous coordination. The technology shouldn't be possible for a species of their development level. What the hegemony forces didn't understand was that humanity's greatest advantage wasn't their hidden fleet or superior tactics. It was their approach to warfare itself. Where other species had developed military doctrine based on centralized command and overwhelming force, humans had embraced distributed decision-making and adaptive strategy. Captain Elena Stormwind, commanding the destroyer Defiant near the asteroid belt, demonstrated this principle as she led her squadron in a strike against a hegemony heavy cruiser. Hunter Squadron. Independent engagement authorized. Exploit target weaknesses as identified. Her pilots didn't wait for detailed orders from Fleet Command. Each had studied hegemony ship designs for years, knew their vulnerabilities, and possessed the authority to adapt tactics in real time. The result was a level of operational flexibility that the rigid hegemony command structure couldn't match. Aboard the Prometheus, Admiral Blackthorne watched his tactical display with quiet satisfaction. The enemy fleet was beginning to fragment as individual commanders made desperate attempts to escape the tightening net. "Sir, hegemony flagship is transmitting on diplomatic frequencies," reported Communications Officer Dante Swift-Arrow. "Ambassador, Vexathara is requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations." "Put her through to Admiral Voss at the diplomatic station," Blackthorne replied. "But maintain full combat readiness. Diplomacy and warfare often operate on parallel tracks." The transmission reached Admiral Voss aboard the Lunar Command Station, where she had been coordinating the political aspects of humanity's response. Vexathara's image appeared on the screen, her usual composure replaced by barely controlled panic. "Admiral Voss, surely we can resolve this misunderstanding. The hegemony may have been hasty in its assessment of human capabilities." Admiral Voss's expression remained neutral. "Ambassador, you offered us 2 choices, submission or annihilation. We've chosen to present you with a 3rd option, withdrawal." "Withdrawal? But the hegemony has never withdrawn from a conquered system. Then perhaps it's time the hegemony learned something new." Admiral Voss gestured to her tactical display, which showed the devastating losses the alien fleet had sustained. "Your forces are surrounded, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. We're offering you the opportunity to leave our system with your remaining ships intact." Vexathara's mandibles clicked frantically. "The Council will never accept such terms. The hegemony's reputation throughout the galaxy will survive better than your fleet will if you choose to continue this engagement," Admiral Voss interrupted. "Tell me, Ambassador, How many of your people are you willing to sacrifice for pride? The question struck at the heart of Vexthara's dilemma. The hegemony's expansion had always been built on the principle of overwhelming force achieving quick victories with minimal losses. A prolonged battle with heavy casualties was political poison for the ambitious bureaucrats who had engineered this campaign. Meanwhile, the tactical situation continued to deteriorate for the hegemony forces. The human fleet wasn't just winning. They were demonstrating a level of technological and strategic sophistication that called into question every assumption the hegemony had made about primitive species on the galactic periphery. Admiral Blackthorne received updates from across the battle space, each one confirming humanity's dominance. The Titan defense grid reports successful neutralization of the enemy's heavy assault division. Casualties, 0. The Outer System Patrol. Groups have contained all attempted breakout maneuvers. No enemy vessels have escaped the system perimeter. Jupiter Command reports capture of an intact hegemony corvette. The crew has requested political asylum. As the hours passed, it became clear that the hegemony fleet faced a choice between complete destruction and unconditional surrender. For a species accustomed to dictating terms to conquered worlds, it was an intolerable position, but increasingly it was their only option. The surrender came not as a formal ceremony, but as a desperate transmission from the crippled hegemony flagship. Fleet Admiral Krasoth, his command deck filled with smoke and sparking debris, finally acknowledged what his tactical displays had been telling him for hours. His force was beaten. Human Fleet Command. This is Admiral Krasoth of the Galactic. Hegemony, I request immediate ceasefire and am prepared to discuss terms of withdrawal. Aboard the Prometheus, Admiral Blackthorne exchanged glances with his senior staff. The victory was complete. But how they handled this moment would determine humanity's future relationship with the galaxy at large. Patch me through to Admiral Krasoth directly, Blackthorne ordered. When the connection established, he found himself facing a being whose 8 eyes reflected a mixture of defeat and growing respect. Admiral Krasoth, I'm Fleet Admiral Blackthorne of the Sol Defense Force. Your request for ceasefire is acknowledged. However, there's something you need to understand about humanity before we proceed. The alien admiral's tentacles writhed nervously. What do you mean? You came here believing you were conquering a single world. But Earth isn't just our home world. It's the capital of the United Human Colonies. We have settlements in 47 star systems, Admiral. You've just declared war on an interstellar civilization. The revelation hit Krasoth like a physical blow. Hegemony intelligence had completely missed the scope of human expansion. What they had assumed was a single-planet species was actually a multi-system civilization with military assets scattered across dozens of light years. Dr. Lydia Ironforge, participating in the negotiation via quantum link from the research station, provided additional context. Admiral, we've been observing hegemony expansion patterns for 73 years. Your fleets follow predictable routes, your conquest protocols never vary, and your intelligence gathering is remarkably limited. Ambassador Vexthara, who had been silent during the military negotiations, finally found her voice. This is impossible. The hegemony survey showed no evidence of extra-system human presence. Director Maxim Steelwind's image appeared on another section of the communication screen. That's because we didn't want you to find evidence. Stealth technology, communication protocols, and strategic deception aren't exactly new concepts, Ambassador. You just assumed primitive species wouldn't be capable of implementing them. The implications were staggering. If humanity could hide an entire interstellar civilization from hegemony intelligence, what other assumptions about primitive species were wrong? How many potential threats existed in the galaxy that the hegemony had dismissed as insignificant? Admiral, Blackthorne continued the revelation. Your withdrawal from Sol is just the beginning, Admiral. Tomorrow, Hegemony fleets in the Centauri system will find themselves facing human battle groups they never detected. Next week, your installations. In the Vega sector, we'll discover that those abandoned mining claims are actually military observation posts. Krazoth's voice carried a note of genuine fear. What do you want from us? What we've always wanted, Admiral Voss interjected, her image joining the multi-way conference. To be left alone. The hegemony's expansion has been built on the assumption that might makes right. You conquer because you can, not because you should. General Nightingale added his perspective from the Mars Command Center. But we've learned something about your organization, Admiral. Your various member species aren't all willing participants in the hegemony's expansion. Some of them were conquered just like you intended to conquer us. The human revelations continued to cascade. Intelligence reports that had taken decades to compile were shared with devastating efficiency. The hegemony learned that humanity had identified 73 oppressed species within their empire, located hidden resistance movements on 41 conquered worlds, and established covert contact with independence factions throughout hegemony. Space. Captain Stormwind, whose squadron had captured the intact hegemony corvette, reported her most significant discovery. Admiral, the crew of the captured vessel includes members of 6 different species. Only 3 of them are fighting willingly. The others were conscripted from conquered worlds. This information struck at the heart of the hegemony's greatest vulnerability. Their empire wasn't held together by loyalty or shared purpose, but by force and fear. Subject species that had been oppressed for generations suddenly had reason to hope that resistance was possible. Ambassador Vexithara's mandibles clicked in what might have been distress. You're talking about destabilizing the entire galactic order. No, Admiral Voss replied firmly. We're talking about establishing a new galactic order, one based on voluntary cooperation rather than enforced submission. Admiral Blackthorne delivered the final ultimatum. Here are our terms, Admiral. Krazoth. Your fleet withdraws immediately from Sol and all human-claimed systems. The hegemony acknowledges human sovereignty and agrees to non-interference in human affairs. In return, we won't share our intelligence about hegemony military capabilities with the various resistance movements throughout your empire. The threat was clear and devastating. Humanity had studied hegemony tactics for decades, identified weaknesses in their military doctrine, and could provide that information to every oppressed species in hegemony space. The empire that had seemed invincible hours earlier was suddenly facing the prospect of simultaneous uprisings across hundreds of worlds. Krazoth looked at his ruined command deck, then at the tactical display showing the remnants of his once mighty fleet. I need to consult with the Council. You have 6 hours, Admiral Blackthorne replied. After that, we begin broadcasting our intelligence files to every resistance movement in the galaxy. 3 days after the Battle of Sol, the Hegemony Council's response arrived via heavily encrypted transmission. The terms were more comprehensive than humanity had dared hope. Complete withdrawal from human space, formal recognition of human sovereignty, and, most significantly, an invitation for humanity to join the Galactic Council as an equal member. Ambassador Vexithara, her pride severely wounded but her survival instincts intact, delivered the Council's message from the rebuilt communications array of her damaged flagship. The Galactic Hegemony Council acknowledges that our initial assessment of human capabilities was incomplete. We extend an offer of formal diplomatic relations. Admiral Voss, now serving as humanity's primary diplomatic representative, received the transmission aboard the lunar station. Around her, holographic displays showed the aftermath of humanity's victory. Hegemony fleets withdrawing from 17 star systems, intelligence reports flowing in from across the galaxy, and most remarkably, contact requests from dozens of previously unknown civilizations. Ambassador Vexithara, Admiral Voss replied, humanity appreciates the Council's recognition. However, we have conditions of our own. The negotiation that followed would reshape galactic politics for generations. Humanity demanded not just recognition, of their own sovereignty, but establishment of protections for smaller civilizations throughout the galaxy. The hegemony's expansion by conquest model would be replaced by a more complex system of voluntary association and mutual defense agreements. Dr. Ironforge, who had spent decades studying xenobiology, found herself thrust into the role of interspecies cultural advisor. The galaxy is far more diverse than the hegemony's homogenization policies would suggest, she explained to the assembled human leadership. We're receiving communications from 47 different species, requesting contact and potential alliance. Director Steelwind's intelligence network, revealed at last, provided comprehensive analysis of the galactic political situation. The hegemony's power was always more perception than reality. They controlled through fear and the assumption of invincibility. Once we demonstrated that they could be defeated, their entire power structure became unstable. General Nightingale, coordinating with human forces throughout colonized space, reported on the broader implications. Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from hegemony garrison forces in 6 different systems. Some of them are requesting asylum, others are simply abandoning their positions. The Empire is fragmenting. But perhaps the most significant development came from Captain Stormwind's prisoner interviews. The captured hegemony crew had provided detailed information about oppressed species throughout the Empire, including locations of forced labor camps, resistance movements, and hidden colonies of species thought extinct. Admiral, she reported, the Zephyrian species that the hegemony claimed to have exterminated, they're alive. Hidden colonies in the Andromeda Reach, maintaining their culture in secret for over 2 centuries. Admiral Blackthorn, from his flagship, coordinated humanity's response to these revelations. Signal the Prometheus Fleet Group. We're expanding our mission profile. Liberation and protection operations are now authorized. The war that had begun as a simple demand for Earth's submission was transforming into something far greater, a galactic revolution that would free hundreds of oppressed civilizations and establish a new model for interstellar relations. 6 months. Later, Ambassador Vexithara stood once again on a communication platform, but the circumstances had changed dramatically. Instead of delivering ultimatums, she was signing the Treaty of Sol, establishing the Galactic Cooperative Alliance to replace the hegemony's authoritarian structure. Admiral Voss, now serving as humanity's first galactic ambassador, watched as representatives from 137 different species signed the historic document. The galaxy that had seemed so hostile just months before was revealing itself to be filled with civilizations eager for peaceful cooperation and mutual advancement. You know, Admiral Voss commented to her assembled colleagues, they came here, demanding our submission. Instead, they found something they didn't expect. General Nightingale, resplendent in his new dress uniform marking him as the first human member of the Galactic Defense Force, nodded thoughtfully. What's that? Admiral Voss smiled as she watched the diverse assembly of beings working together to draft the charter for a new galactic order. They found that sometimes, when you try to conquer a species that refuses to be conquered, you end up liberating an entire galaxy instead. The sky full of human battleships that had once been humanity's. Desperate defense had become the foundation of a new era. Earth, the small blue world that the hegemony had sought to subjugate, had become the capital of a galactic alliance built on the radical premise that civilization was stronger when it embraced diversity rather than enforcing conformity. In the HFY end, the hegemony's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating human military capability. It was underestimating the power of an idea whose time had come. The idea that the strong had a responsibility to protect the weak, that diversity was strength rather than weakness, and that the future belonged not to conquerors, but to those who chose cooperation over domination. The stars, once hostile and forbidding, had become humanity's new frontier, not to conquer, but to explore alongside friends they had yet to meet.